Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings to Honorable Ibu Indri Anastasia S.S. M.A. and Ibu Bunga Wulandari S.Pd. M.EIL, Ph.D. as the examiners of this research seminar, and to Honorable Bapak Dedy Kurniawan S.S. M.A. and Ibu Duti Volya S.Pd. M.Pd. as my supervisors. Welcome to my research proposal seminar. The title of this research proposal is EFL Students' Perspective on the Effectiveness of Replika Chatbot app as a conversational agent to improve conversational competence. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Miftahul Faris with the student number A1B218029. Without waiting any longer, I think we can start the seminar. Let me start by elaborating the research background. There are a few points on why the study should be conducted. The very first thing is communicative language teaching approach and its significance. CLT approach has been around for quite some time and was firstly introduced in 1960s. So here Sulsa defines CLT or communicative language teaching as an approach to teaching languages that emphasize the importance of being able to communicate with others as the primary goal of learning a language. This approach in language teaching has gained a lot of traction in many teaching curriculum. Hence, many schools and institutions have leaned toward this communicative approach as many communicative activities are becoming more available. As we are aware that CLT has a really prominent role in our education, there should be some effort put in action to make this approach much more effective in practice. There are several iterations of this communicative competence model, but I think the model from Celsa Murcia in 2007 would be used in the study. Drawing from this diagram, we can say that to establish communicative competence, there are other competences that have to be put in place. Among other 6 competences, let's focus on the interactional competence. To put it simply, interactional competence is the ability to interact with others in the target language. The competence has 3 sub-components, which are actional competence, conversational competence, and nonverbal or paralinguistic competence. Conversational competence has the same significance but is often being overlooked in establishing interactional competence. Conversational competence is rooted in the conversational turn-taking system, that is how to open or close a conversations, establish and change topics, or when you have to interrupt a conversation. There are some challenges in the classroom that might influence students' conversational competence. The first one would be students' formulaic knowledge, which is also a part of communicative competence. This formulaic competence refers to the acquisition of prefabricated and fixed chunks of language, including greetings, pause fillers, or other common expressions. Ray in 2000 states that these sets of expressions are really important in retaining students' fluency in conversation. Textbook lessons alone cannot make up for all formulaic expressions that students need in real-world conversation because they are invariably short and direct. A more recent study by Nino and Agustin in 2016 also suggests that many conversations found in university students sounds unnatural, so formulaic expressions need to be thought with a proper context. Another challenge of teaching conversation is the lack of understanding of how conversation should flow, meaning understanding the turn-taking system. Loma states that the ability to plan, process, and produce the language is greatly concerned when a conversation takes place. The ability to know the structure of a conversation has to be acquired so that speakers know how to take turn, when to or not to interrupt someone, know when to use some conversational strategies. Well, another problem of teaching conversation would be the lack of conversational partners. Bachelor and Schools in 1981 state that there must be a sender and receiver in the conversation to communicate ideas, information, or feelings. In other words, if there is no other people around to speak with, that would be a problem. Students also have very limited time to engage in a conversation because the time they spend with their classmates or teacher in the classroom is very limited. The last challenge of practicing conversation is psychological problems such as anxiety that students may face when they have to practice conversation with other people. With this thing in mind, we should find alternative platform to practice conversation with a safe environment so that students are comfortable and can make a huge step in progress. Now what we need is a potential solution to address these issues. With the overwhelming increase of modern mobile devices, learning a language will be much more convenient through a technology. Among other platforms, chatbots or modern conversational agents seems to be a great conversational partner to facilitate conversation practice. Chatbots provide a way for students to be more flexible with their time as they have more self-paced interactions so they can practice whenever they want or wherever they can. It offers privacy and safe environment where they can indulge themselves without having to fear about the presence of other people, which often cause anxiety. This goes accordingly with the role of students in CLT, as Brown in 2001 suggests students are in charge of their learning. Chatbots cannot give you some elaborate feedback like teachers, so teachers are still needed for the role of giving guidance to students. Hahn in 2019 suggests that chat interaction has some advantages for language learners because the students can reread the chat history, and they also have more time for production and comprehension, and even they can use other tools to deal with troubles in production or comprehension. There are so many chatbots in the market right now, but Replika seems to be a great core for a conversational agent as it has a natural language processing. Replika is also easy to access. Students can access it through their mobile phones or computer to their app and website as long as they have internet service. There are a couple of reasons research that has specifically studied Replika. For instance, Hakim in 2018 identified 2 forms of reading expression that the chatbot can perform. Another study by Amalia in 2020 also reveals that there are emotive expressions present in Replika. With these challenges at the beginning and the potential alternative, this study aims to understand student perspective towards the effectiveness of this technology in improving conversational competence. Now with the research background, we can formulate 2 research questions. Firstly, what is EVL students' perspective towards the use of Replika as a conversation partner in improving learners' conversational competence? Secondly, how do EVL students use Replika to improve their conversational competence? On the other half, there are also research objectives for this research. The first one is to understand the perspective of EVL students towards the use of Replika on improving learners' conversational competence. The second one is to explore ways of using Replika to improve learners' conversational competence. As the research scope and limitation, study focuses on the perspective of students in the English education program of Universitas Jambi. The research also limits the study on the use of text-based mode of interactions found in Replika, which is currently free to use. In this app, the voice-based is a premium feature, so we don't want them to pay for it. Also, given the fact that a conversation can take various forms, as stated by Dedy and Turrell in 1994, whether it be text-based chat or spoken forms, they hold the same principles and patterns. Now, moving on to the research significance, this study will be significant to a few levels of society and institutions, mainly including teachers, students, schools, and researchers in contributing new pedagogical knowledge in the area of teaching English as a foreign language or TEFL, also providing a new alternative way of teaching conversational strategies in classroom and improving education quality and students' learning outcomes. Finally, helping researchers discover a new perspective in the use of technology in teaching. Now we're moving into the review of related literature. These are the concepts that will be used in this research. To start off, there is the communicative language teaching that we have already defined previously. According to this model, there are 6 components of communicative competence. There is social cultural competence, linguistic competence, formulaic competence, interactional competence, and finally strategic competence. And within the interactional competence, there is conversational competence, which is the ability based on the conversational turn-taking system, including how to open and close conversations, establish and change topics, interrupt and use conversation strategies. We also will use the concept of teacher and students' roles in CLT. According to Brown in 2001, the role of teacher in CLT is to serve as a facilitator and guide for students while students are in charge of their learning. Dedy and Turrell in 1994 have some good ground rules of conversation structures and rules, which include openings, turn-takings, interrupting, topic shift, agency pair, and finally closing. There are also conversational strategies, which Dedy and Turrell in 1994 defined as a means of dealing with communication trouble spot. The strategies include message adjustment or avoidance, paraphrase, approximations, appeal for help, asking for repetition, asking for clarifications, interpretive summary, checking others' understanding, and use of fillers or citation devices. Another term we need to define in this study is conversation partners. According to Bachelor in Schools in 1981, there must be a sender and receiver in order for ideas, information, or feelings to be communicated. A conversation partner acts as this receiver and sender in this conversation. According to Hahn in 2019, conversational agents can be developed as stand-alone conversation partners. Let's continue to another concept, the modern conversational agents. Hussein in 2019 described Chatbot as a computer program designed to interact with users using natural language or text in a way that the user thinks he is having a dialogue with a human. According to Hussein, early conversational agents relied on keyword matching and minimal context identification. and lack the ability to maintain a conversation. While according to Ackman in 2021, the modern conversational agents or CAs have become more developed in these several aspects, including real-time automatic recognitions, understanding the meaning of utterance, the presentations of contextually meaningful replies, continuous maintenance of conversational dialogue. This technology is called NLP or natural language processing. The chatbots can be classified based on knowledge domains, as in open domain, and specific domains, mode of interaction, as in text and voice-based, and the goals such as in informative, conversational, and task-based chatbots. Now we're moving to the chatbots for language learning. There are a few studies on this, but to make it short, Barsley in 2019 states that technology can be used to assist teaching in the classroom without ever replacing the teachers. Teachers may be able to concentrate on the productive tasks while language practice takes place between individuals and their computers. Now let's move on into the studies on Replika. Replika is a chatbot or modern conversational agent that are not explicitly designed for education purposes, rather it is a commercial application. However, it can be used as a conversational agent that potentially can be helpful for students for learning English conversation. Several studies have identified several features of the app, including types of expressions and utterance that are used in the conversation. Next, we're going to talk about the research methodology, starting with the research design. We will use the qualitative exploratory research design, which is appropriate for the nature of the study, which is quite inductive and exploratory. We will incorporate the semi-structured in-depth interview for the data collection technique, and the thematic analysis for the technique of data analysis. As for the context of the study will be conducted within the populations of English education students from Universitas Jambi. One of the goals for the program in this department is for the students to acquire the communication skills to use English as a language. Students also might face problems that we have mentioned earlier. The populations for this study is students from the English education program of Universitas Jambi, which is roughly about 500 individuals. The main sampling technique used in this research is purposive sampling. Some criteria used in selecting the participant include speaking English as a foreign language, having an average experience of using conversational agents, and taking an English course from the program. Next, we're looking at the data collection. The type of data that will be collected in this qualitative study is verbal data in the form of statements. The semi-structured interview will be employed as the data collection technique. The study requires an interview protocol as the instrument. This interview protocol contains a set of questions, and these questions will be developed based on the following criteria. An expert will look into these questions to ensure the trustworthiness of this instrument. Move on to the data collection procedure. In this earlier stage, the researcher will deal with the administrations for conducting research. The participant will be selected through purposive sampling. Participant will be administered with a letter of consent will be notified of a schedule. The interview protocol will be used as a guide during this process of interview. This interview is estimated to be conducted in 15 minutes. At the very end, participants will be informed about the member checking. The data collected from this interview will be stored in a computer. After processing the data, additional participants can be considered, but if the data shows saturation, then no more participants are added. Alright, let's move on to the data analysis. The thematic analysis is used in the study as data analysis technique to identify themes in data and to create connections. The procedure of the data analysis is adopted from Johnny in 2007. The first one is transcribing the data. In this research, the data needs to be transformed into text before it can be coded. The second one is coding, which consists of two cycles, the initial and second level coding. The process of initial coding starts by reading the whole transcription and adding an informative label when the content is relevant to the study. After the data is coded with descriptive labels, the second level coding will be performed to give broader and more abstract commonalities. The list of themes is developed based on the categories of criteria used in the interview, as well as possibly introducing new ones. The next step in data analysis is writing memos. During the coding process, ideas and thoughts that arise need to be written down. And the final step is interpreting and drawing conclusions. In this stage, the researcher needs to select important themes, and this interpretation process turns into final product, which is the final conclusions. After we finish, we with the data analysis procedure, we have the trustworthiness. The credibility of the study will be established by member checking. Participants are informed with the interpretation and they are given the opportunity to clarify their intentions. In the study, the researcher will keep research records to establish transferability. This description will show how the research can be applied in other contexts. These are main references that are used in this research, though there are more references in the research proposal paper that are not shown in the slides. This is the end of the seminar. I really hope that this research will be worth an approval. Thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.